September 28th, 2016, and I want to welcome everyone to Naked Departure Radio. With me in studio today is Victor, and we wanted to talk about a very interesting subject that came about when we discovered, well, when the vast majority of Barbadians discovered that Barbados might have been a lab. It was a lab, it was an experiment in turning human beings into slaves. Let me welcome Victor into the studio. Victor?
Morning, Sherry. Morning, listeners.
Thank
Yes, that was a very interesting find that you posted on the blog, and it was also enlightening to me because before that, I had no clue that my beloved Barbados had been used as a lab during the triangular slave um, debacle that our ancestors were brought into during the slave trade. Having listened to that and subsequently having read um, from the pages of history about where Barbados was and its juxtaposition to experimentation on blacks. Um, Indeed, Barbados, um, those that live in Barbados, the remnants of which has manifested itself in many Barbadians. We need to be speaking to those ills and to our Africanness and to our African brothers and sisters across the diaspora with reference to the treatment that we absorbed, our ancestors absorbed, that's still to be found in us to this day. And historically, that we meted out to various people of Afro-centric origins across the globe, more especially in North America. So I'm interested, Sherry, because I know you've done exhaustive study on this, more so than myself, to hear your viewpoint and to be able to add a little to what I think is a very interesting topic because it's so rooted in some of the manifestations in our behaviors today, to now, right now, that is interesting to hear where you will take this and what you have found. So I toss it back to you.
Yeah, I think I know just as much as anyone else because when I was a young girl in Barbados, I felt it. I felt something was really weird, but that's just something that people just put aside. That means nothing in the realm of things. Your feelings and your that six or seven sense means nothing. But coming to this realization, since I started looking at Barbados with new eyes, maybe years ago, 5, 6 years ago, I started looking at Barbados with new eyes, with a new sense of wanting to know why do Barbadians behave the way they behave? Why is it always a con? Why is it always something that they can get from you and they don't want to give. They don't want to give you anything. And then to search and to realize that the gem that they spoke about when we were young, yes, would have talked about the Caribs and they would have talked about the Arawaks. That's nothing. It's just gravy when you think about what really happened in Barbados being the epicenter of what it was to turn a human being into a slave. And when you read that the white masters could kill our ancestors for any reason, when you hear that babies were ripped out of women's stomachs as part of the terror that was made out, when you hear that their our ancestors' mouths were pried open and they would shit in their mouths or piss in their faces, when you hear about what it took to turn a human being into an animal. Barbadians are grappling with this. It's something that they must, it must make their head spin. It must, sometimes the blood rushes to your head because you just cannot believe what you're hearing. And then to think that the same masters, the remnant, the ones that stayed, black people went back to those people and begged for their jobs back or begged for a job. It is beyond reason. It is mind blowing to think that a 95% population will still depend on people who did that to their ancestors. So in a way, you have to imagine that they don't want to know this history. They don't want to know that they were complicit. They don't want to think of themselves as comfortable in slavery. They don't want to think of themselves as being the first domesticated people. The first domesticated people. Because after a while, you had to tame the animal that you created, because they had to work in the houses, they had to work in the industries, they had to do the work that the white people were doing, but they left or they retired or they died, whatever. But they had to do that work, so you had to domesticate the ones that you created as animals. So when we look at this straight on and we see Barbados as being a lab. Some people would say that the Garden of Eden was a lab and it created a new human. And then to think that there was a black hole in the West Indies, a black hole, a singularity, a place in space and time called Barbados, that such inhumane suppression, such violence, such horrors happen, and we happen to have been born there. What do you say? Could that stench have been removed from us? Could the madness have been removed from us? I mean, the DNA, has it stuck to us somewhere along the line? The memory of it all, is it still with us? Are we afraid for no reason? Do we like or not like ourselves for some reason? And when we look at everything in totality, how do we look back at what happened in Barbados and the fact that we were born there? How do we analyze? How do we recompense? How do we reconcile? How is everything that you can look at, and you try to be an intellectual, you try to act within reason, you try to settle your mind, and you try to have some sort of sense to what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and you try to make sense out of something that is so nonsensical. Because who could imagine that our ancestors were treated the way they were treated, how they were branded, their tongues were cut out, their noses were chopped off, their hands were chopped off, half their feet were cut. Who could imagine something like that could have happened? No children were being born. Every child was dying in childbirth. The mother was dying. They had to keep a constant flow of slaves, of people coming from Africa. It was a constant trek back and forth to bring people to Barbados because they were dying. How do you turn a human? How do you turn a man? How do you turn a woman into an animal without having a whole lot of death on your hand? And then you wonder, were there psychedelics? Were they using drugs? Was there something else other than what we are hearing that they used to turn our foreparents into groveling, diminutive animals? So for me, it perplexes my mind, and I want to know more. For some people, they don't want to know. They wish they had never heard. And for some people, they say, well, it is what it is. That's what some people say. It is what it is. But where do you go from here? For me, I want to know more. I want to know everything that happened. And I want to know, after everything that has happened, why do black people still go to the white man? for sustenance. Victor?
Barbadians oftentimes tend to kill the messenger and never to look at the message. And I believe that what's happening in North America with seemingly outrageous regularity as it relates to Black Lives Matter movement, the current political climate as it affects African Americans and Africans in America has a lot to do with what transpired during the triangular trade route. Many may say, well, that happened hundreds of years ago, but the DNA, the footprint is still upon not only the Caribbean but also South America. You know, Brazil is has the largest population of people of African descent outside of Africa. So what has transpired in Brazil, what's transpired in other South American countries. Mexico has a large population of black people as well. So does Argentina and Peru. And the Druids, the same kind of social ills, the same social sclerosis that has found itself upon Barbadians and other people of African descent continue here in the United States. And the video that was posted on Naked Blog was an excellent video because it encapsulated really what's transpired relative to the totality of the experiment in Barbados, how it was begun. And the person who narrated the blog, the video, along with Dr. Hilary Beckles, shed great light on how that transpired, how it brought forward from back then to now the totality of the brutality of what Europeans, Englishmen, were responsible for doing in Barbados in that specific era of slavery. But to fast forward to the ills that that has impacted on Barbadians, it's the realization that to this day we still call Barbados Little England, almost as if that's something to be proud of, when most Europeans are treated better in Barbados than they're treated in Europe. And most Europeans are not very spiritual at all, not very religious at all. In fact, Europe probably is one of the most irreligious places that you can find, non-religious places that you can find on the planet Earth. So the fact that we have adopted something or anything given to us by those people, by the people who were largely responsible for our mistreatment, is complete lunacy. I do not understand how we could adopt a model like that, where 95% population, a government headed by people that look like me and you, Sherry, yet the mendicants that we call politicians, and that's exactly what they are, people. They are mendicants, prostitutes that sit in a place called a house of assembly. It's a house of whores, and that's where those prostitutes sit. They prostitute themselves upon the people without grace. They screw the people every day without even kissing them, without any kind of caring for the people. It's insidious, and it could only have been orchestrated by the 5%, knowing that they were going to have that social experiment. And Barbados, in all actuality, was the first place for apartheid. Long before South Africa, Barbados had its own apartheid and still does, still have its own apartheid. So at the end of the day, the ills meted out on the people of Barbados at the hands of the prostitutes, the 5%ers, and the operatives of the 5%ers, namely the 30 prostitutes that sit in Parliament, needs to really be looked at carefully and to be revamped, because the people need to have a social cry, a social outcry against what's happening to them. the ills that the people suffer, they suffer not only from the 5%, but from the people who hold the hands, who carry the dog whistles, the whistleblowers for the masters, the fetchers for the masters of the 5% masters of Barbados in the government. And that is why issues like rampant crime, social ills like not being able to get water in parishes for almost a year now, without anyone being responsible, without anyone standing up and taking some form of responsibility and correction for what's going on, is allowed to happen. Those things were not just haphazard things or things that were just pulled out of thin air, Sherry. Those things are actually part and parcel of the Barbadianization and bastardization of the masses in Barbados at the hands of an inept and corrupt government who has been spoon fed and force fed the same model that existed in the 1600s, that they hold on to today, that they propagate, that they perpetuate without any amelioration at all and any caring at all for the citizens of Barbados. And the people need to understand that the systemic racist policies of the British, of the slave holders, the 5% former slave masters that populate Barbados today, the remnants of that attitude persists in our culture in Barbados today. That is why it is easy for them to pretty much do what has been done here in the United States of America, to give the minions, to give the blacks liquor, drugs, prostitution, high crime rates, allow them to kill each other and to sit back almost with content and allow these things to happen without any regard at all. And I'm not neglecting the fact, Sherry, that black Barbadians do not need to take responsibility for their own actions. I'm not disregarding that. But I am indeed saying that there was a social responsibility that should have been offered to the people in Barbados um, after slavery, and the historical pages will tell us that those things were never offered to black people in Barbados. And if black people in Barbados really stand up and look at what they're owed relative to any form of reparation, in any form of justice, they will find out that really to call Barbados Little England, to get on a boat called the Jolly Roger or anything of that sort is insidious, is lunacy, and that we should do away, totally do away, in acting in any capacity that would merge our soul, merge our activities and actions with anything that is European. Europeans did not mean Barbados well. The history pages will reflect that. Dr. Hilary Beckles, in all of his lectures, has spoken eloquently with reference to the totality of the disruption that Europe and the European invaders that they have perpetuated on Barbados. How then can we as Barbadians in all normalcy walk around every single day knowing that our ancestors were rapidly, almost ventricularly scarred for many, many centuries afterwards. And it still persists today, and we wake up every single day knowing that we are living in an insidious dream, a dream from which there seems to be no level of recovery for black people. 95% of us ruled by 5% in all facets. And that's just in Barbados, not to look at the totality of how the global breakdown is relative to how people of color, black people, melanated people, whether they be black, brown, yellow, whatever, how they are controlled and maintained by the superior ruling classes, which are minority classes. We need to look at that because of the triangular slave trade that still exists to this day, still exists for all intents and purposes, in the boardrooms, in the institutions, in the schools, in the churches. And it is all there for everyone who wants to see it, to reach out and touch it. It is there. So unless we make those drastic changes that will permit future generations, if not even our own generation, but future generations, to have a cleaner, more positive life and a prospect for success, then we are just spinning the wheel. We're just kicking the can further down the road to no avail. So I'll toss this back to you and have your feel on what I just said.
I agree with everything you've just said, and I wonder about the people who would think that we are being pessimistic, that we are being negative, because from my vantage point, when every day a black man is being shot in the back by white policemen, we don't hear about Japanese, we don't hear about anyone else being shut up. We know that the Cubans came over, and you cannot even go to Miami and find someone who does not speak Spanish. And some people came over from Cuba and they refuse to learn English. But the thing about the Cuban is that they set up their own area in Miami. They are in the courts. They have law firms. They have coffee shops. They have shoe repair, everything Cuban. They have their food. They have everything that you can think about that they had in Cuba. They have in Miami in abundance, and they have thrived. They are thriving. So it can be done. People can come out of situations and do things. But what happened with the Igbo? What happened with the tribe that populated the West Indies for slavery? What happened? What happened there? And when I say that I can see if a situation were to happen in case of an emergency, as I termed it, get nigger, what do you think, Victor? Do you think that it would be really hard to think of them putting their hands on black people and making them slaves again? Do you think that it would be an impossibility?
They don't have to place their hands on us and make us slaves again. The minstrel show still continues. The show with blackface still continues. It just continues at another level, in another sphere, albeit in a corporate boardroom, albeit at governmental level. I heard recently that the Barbados government has gone through another downgrade.
You're sounding a little out of loop. You're sounding a little
I'm,
muffled.
I'm, I'm hearing that the Barbados government has gone down again at another downgrade financially. So they're still doing it. They're doing it to governments now. There are economic hitmen out there that continuously take control of a country, of a country's people. Its most beautiful and most natural resource, of course, is its people. They take control of that, and they force those people into servitude, into lack of self-determination. And that's happening in Barbados now because the vision of the people that govern Barbados is lacking. The people that hold office in Barbados, that are servants to the masses, your ministers, your parliamentary representatives, those people lack the resolve to make issues, put issues in front of them and to solve issues. They're not issue prone as far as resolution. So if the question is, can it happen again? It's happening. It's not, can it happen again? The people are being held by serfs. The serfs that exist in the 21st century happens to be the government of Barbados. And they hold the people for the 5% that run the country, the 5% that are able to take from the system in Barbados all of the plenitude, all of the haughty lifestyle that really has been ill-gotten gains. And there are many who will say, well, I came to Barbados and I worked hard in Barbados. No, you can't work hard when you have a white complexion. A white complexion already absolves you of having to work hard. It opens doors for you that can never be opened for most people that look like me, right? And that's not to make an excuse. the playing field could never be level. There can be no black man in Barbados who could have gotten what Carl Williams got or what Busy Williams has received. Never. Those playing fields were opened up for those two people at the behest, basically, of black people who propped them up, who gave them the opportunity to be where they are. But more importantly, a black government, a black majority government gave a white majority system the propellant that it needed to be successful on an island or on several different islands. So we have invidious distinctions that exist throughout the Caribbean, more importantly in Barbados. And yes, if you're asking me if I believe that slavery has been revisited, it never left. The residuals of it, are to be found, are to be seen right now in Barbados and in the classist, segregationist system, the apartheid system that exists in Barbados and that has existed from inception till right now. So I'm telling you that historically we may have one man, one vote, we may have a parliamentary democracy, but the truism of democratic principles and democratic ideals, Barbados is certainly far away from those things. And as Barbados's credit in the world is depleted and it becomes more and more forced into a debt crisis, more and more Barbadians will become disenfranchised, and they will really be able to start to understand on a larger scale where they are relative to what has been done in Barbados. And again, who knows if what's being done from an economic vantage point is not even part of a scheme to make the 5% even richer in Barbados. Because once the poor are disenfranchised to where they only have the shirts on their back sharing, it may very well be that those who are very wealthy in Barbados even become even become wealthier. They will even become wealthier and even own much more Barbados. So the surf situation is still further perpetuated.
Yeah. I've been yeah, I've been made to understand that there was a time in Barbados history where they were starving. When I say starving, I mean literally starving, eating rats, eating dog. They were going into the careenage and fetching food that was discarded, outdated food. And I was made to believe that it was a hard time in Barbados. People were catching hell. And you would have thought that with that history, with that behind them, and you can say it's modern, it was like in the 1930s, 1940s, with that happening, you would have you would think that they would have that would have been another opportunity, a second opportunity since being emancipated to really have gotten their act together. The show is ending on Blog Talk, so I want to thank everyone that is on Blog Talk, and we are going to move over now to we are you streaming and we are YouTubing, so we have other methods that we are recording. So I'm going to sign off from Blog Talk. Okay, yeah, so we can continue here. Are you with me, Victor?
I am still with you.
Yeah,
Yes.
so stay with me still because we are still recording on another channel. Yeah, so you would think that after that starvation and people dying and belly sinking into the back and blah blah blah, you would have thought that Barbadians would have used that second opportunity, maybe a third of that was probably a third or fourth opportunity to have gotten their act together, but they didn't. They didn't. So I don't know what it's going to take for Barbadians to come into the realization that their situation is dire. They it would take nothing for them to become slaves again because they're so accustomed to working for the white man. But what will happen is Whereas now there's unemployment. When there's slavery, there's 100% employment. As we all know, there's no such thing as being unemployed. When there's slavery, and everyone would have a job, and everyone would have a house, and everyone would be getting fed, but it would be a whole different situation. I just don't understand it. I would advise people not to have children, but that's a whole another story. Why would you have children and bring them into slavery, especially if you didn't know? Now you know. So what would you and I, what are our roles as elders? What are our roles as elders? How are we going to be impactful to people listening to us? Are they going to care? Is it going to change anything? Do we say what we say and just move on into the sunset and don't coming on the radio? What are our roles, and how do people perceive us? And yes, we both know that people get on you and they try to shoot the messenger, but other than that, what are we supposed to do with this knowledge that was there, that it's not really being told the way it should be told? Because were it told the way it should be told, there would be no white people living in Barbados, and tourism and the service industry would not be a part of Barbados economy, because you can see where they went from slaves into the service. They did what they knew best. They created a economy based on slavery, based on what they knew. All they knew was how to serve, how to make a bed, how to clean the toilet after a white man, how to serve them food and ask them, is it okay? Was it okay? Master, was that okay? They built an economy based on slavery. How do you talk to people after you can actually see what time of day it is, what it is? How do you talk? How do you try to impress people to evolve, to give up the chains, just give up the chain, find the key, unlock themselves, and walk out from that bondage? What more can we say, Victor? What more?
The responsibilities to the masses, though. I mean, people have to wake up in North America, Brazil, Africa. They have to wake up, not with a piece of kente cloth that they wrap around themselves or change a name. That does not purport to be Afrocentric in anything other than in name. Afrocentricity is something that it's internal. It goes to the core of who a person is. That's why I never was one for people with dreadlocks that walk around and have a head full of dreadlocks. You might have a head full of dreadlocks and a black heart, and a person may not have any dreadlocks at all, but be more responsive to Rastafarianism as a concept and a consciousness from their heart. So at the end of the day, we have to looking at people for who they really are, what they really stand for, what they're really willing to die for. If you're not willing to die for a position that's integral to you and your family, from which you're going to stand up and say, you know what, I'm going to make a difference for myself and my family this day, then you can't even begin to come into the conversation in the 21st century. The reason Black lives don't matter, for the most part, where Black people are being disproportionately killed in North America, is that Black people only keep noise for a couple of weeks when all this stuff is happening. And as soon as it dies down, where it doesn't happen as much anymore, and it doesn't come in the press anymore, then it's not an issue that they're willing to fight for. Why on earth, and I harken back to this, would any person that's Black jump their Black asses on anything called the Jolly Roger and sail on out into the night to party when their ancestors were brought to Barbados, brought to the Caribbean on something that resembled that fucking boat? I don't understand that. And at the end of the day, why would any government permit any money-making entity in Barbados, right, to have something like that You're talking about social ill, and people want to talk about naked departure or Barbados underground or whatever else. They want to talk about social ill. The greatest social ill lies in the ports of Barbados right now. Two of those ships that resemble slave ships, the good ship Jesus, and the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. That's what the Jolly Roger resembles. But the fact of the matter is, Barbadians jump their asses on those things, and they go and they party for the sake of a party, for the sake of shaking your ass. Come on, please. Let's get with it. This is the 21st century. Information doubles every 18 months. 18 months from now, information will have doubled, if not quadrupled. So we can no longer blame the white man for lack of knowledge. We need to go and find the knowledge, the knowledge positive relative to our own people, to our own race, to our own legacy, and to affect changes in a positive way. People need to be singing about conscious stuff, conscious lyrics, not some lyrics about hooping somebody or bullying somebody or whatever else. We need conscious thinkers all over Barbados. We need people that are socially conscious. Socially conscious awakening needs to be happening in Barbados to change the concept of what's going on in Barbados relative to what's called democratic principles and governance. And until we are able to affect those things across the board, until we're able to teach the truth to power, until we're able to say, I'll starve to death, I'll die rather than be forced on my knees to a system that I know that is unjust, then we are just a mirror image of incompetence and decay. We have to be able to stand on our feet as men and not die on our feet as wimps. We need to be able to do that. And until we're able to do that, Sherry, we'll always come to the same consciousness that is unconscious. The consciousness will be there, but the unconsciousness within us, the lack of values and principles that exist within us, will continue to carry us to places where we kill each other, we walk up to a young brother or a young sister and blow their brains out, we continue to scandalize people's names, we continue to do these kinds of wicked things against each other, and then wonder why the white man has no respect for us. It is because we lack the common respect that we should have for each other. The way that I view you, the way that I view Pat, the way that I view Raw, the way that I view anybody else, right? It's all part of how I view myself. It's all part of my own self-respect. We lack the respect, we lack the temerity to stand in the face of wickedness and say to the wicked that the wicked is unjust. Until we're able to do that, until we're able to tell an unjust government, a wicked government, that the masses are suffering at the hands of wickedness and injustice, then guess what? We are just peeing in the wind. We are acting pretty much like an ashtray on a motorcycle. Absolutely useless. And we need to be able to summon, to muster the energy, the tenacity to say to everyone, I'm Barbadian. I'm proud. I'm proud of what I stand for because I know what I stand for. I stand for justice. I stand for righteousness. I stand for the people who no longer can speak for themselves. I stand against the social ills that plague Barbados. I stand against the parish that has been without water for almost a year. I stand for people that are hanging out on the street corners without jobs. I understand their position and I want to make change. And change comes from those people who understand what it is to suffer, who understand what it is to be hungry, who understand what it is to go to bed at night without a father being in the house, who understand what it is to have little kids running around who are not learning in school, who are troubled not because they're bad, but because they're in a school system that is replete with injustice, replete with all kinds of immorality and sexual overtones that demoralizes the household, that demoralizes the family. Every single institution in Barbados under the current Democratic Labour Party government has failed. There is not one that can be pointed to that shows that any success has come to the people of Barbados. Why then have you not rose up? Why have you not risen up and asked those people to leave? Ask them to leave. Don't wait for an election. Every single day, walk down the streets of Barbados and protest against a party that's in power that has done nothing for the people. Crime rate high, highly escalated. Social ills of all sorts, STDs in the healthcare system, school system, water system, electricity, wages, unemployment. Every facet of government run entity in Barbados has been catastrophic, has been a failure under Frondell Stewart and this motley crew of political misfits. Yet they continue to sit and draw salary. The minister responsible for St. Joseph, Dale Marshall, you should be ashamed to take a parliamentary salary and your people in St. Joseph are without water. If they're without water, you should be in that parish every single weekend offloading water for those constituents to get to use, for people in there with small children and the elderly and women, people who are dispossessed of the most basic human amenity, water and air. Water and air, what next? What will you do next? Charge them for the oxygen that they breathe. That's coming next. So at the end of the day, Sherry, to answer your question, the failed policies of those people who are placed in integral positions in people's lives, right, are the systemic reasons why Barbadians are suffering across the board. It is insidious, it is lunacy, and it is disgraceful. And to call yourself a developing country and a government that cares about the people, don't say those things if you don't mean them. Let your actions be so loud that your words mean nothing. It is disgraceful that these ministers in government and these people that trot all over the globe, all over, and enjoy the amenities of good life while their constituents continuously suffer in the muck and mire of Barbados. It is a disgrace. It is very unspiritual and sad. Dale Marshall, I'm hitting out at you. I want a response from you because I'm sending this out to you because I'm a staunch BLP man. I love the Barbados Labour Party, but I don't love any party more than I love Barbados and Barbadians. And I'm sending this out to you, Dale Marshall. Stop being a hypocrite. Represent your constituency or get the hell out of St. Joseph because what you're doing is nothing for the people of St. Joseph as far as providing them with basic human decency, water. I'm not attacking the DLP on this one. I'm coming to you, Dale Marshall, because you're the parliamentary representative. And if you want to have a discussion about this, come on Naked Departure Radio and talk about it like a man.
Wow. Yeah. Well, getting back to the comments that were put in nakeddeparture.com, the website, and they were attached to these blogs that talk about the slave code. People are pretty much resigned to the situation in Barbados. People are pretty much sure that Barbadians are not going to do what you say they should do. Barbadians are never going to say, I'd rather die than to stand for something. Barbadians want to live because they like to foop and they like to party and they like to buy Remy weave and they love their masters. They want to go to work and they want to serve their masters. So, sometimes it makes me wonder why, I do what I do because number one, we both know it's a thankless job, it's a thankless thing that we do here. But other than that, if I didn't think that one or two people were affected positively from what I did, I wouldn't do it at all. Not at all. But I do know that the show does get through to certain people and the blogs do get through to certain people and it's a benefit to them, it's a help to them. And yeah, you can see the light from that particular vantage point. But overall, I don't think anyone has any great hopes for Barbados. And I don't know. I'm not being negative or anything. I'm just repeating what I read. I'm just repeating what is being said. So it's just it's an uphill battle. And if all they know is what was handed down to them, and that's slavery, and that's the service industry, that's showing a good face to earn money. If that's all they know, what else can you expect from people when all they know is how to please, how to bow down? And as far as the political side of it, that's neither here or there with me, because you have the DLP and you have the BLP, and it seems as though they're both bad, and they're both going to rob the people when they do get into government. So that's neither here or there with me. I just, it would be nice. It would be nice if one day we woke up and other people were working to make Barbados a better place for the children that are yet to be born. It would be a nice thing, but I personally don't see it happening. And as I said before, my stance doesn't make me negative. It does not. It's just I have to use the information that I have before me to make certain decisions and to make certain comparisons. And from what I see, I don't see Barbados coming to terms with slavery and coming out of slavery and creating something that is spectacular. I don't see that happening, maybe in a world made new, maybe in a new world, yeah. But as it stands, I don't see it happening. Victor?
I'm on the other side of your argument. I hear you, and I hear what you're saying. But again, I go to hope, and I know that some people view hope as something that's far reaching, and the people need to know that something exists out there in the universe, for which they can they can have an offering, of themselves, and that things that positive and good can come back on them, albeit that they might be suffering, or they might be hurting, or they might be in a spot. But even though you may be suffering or hurting or whatever, you still have certain principles that are innate to you and to your family. And if you stand upon your principles, if you do not disregard your principles or be offered alternatives that are not inherent to what you believe, if you stand firm, like Gideon did, firm on the belief system that, yeah, you might be struggling today, but there's a better tomorrow. There's something better to look forward to. I think that the people can do it. I think that hope springs eternal. But I also know that the road to hell is also paved with good intentions. So at the end of the day, I feel that the people of Barbados deserve much better than they have been given, and that you should hold people accountable to their actions, not only necessarily their words, because oftentimes people come in with promises, promising that they're going to do this or that they're going to do that. No different than a man and a woman, or a woman and a man, depending upon how you see the glass, half empty or half full. They come in with the best intentions in the world, but again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But having said that, hope springs eternal. So when you come into the foray, you come into the whole situation, and you take a look, a top to bottom look at what's going on. You're able to see, who is best. Sometimes the best is none of the above. Sometimes you have to choose the lesser of two evils, but that's still evil. But at the same point in time, we are forced to that right here in the United States right now, choosing the lesser of two evils. Still the same, still choosing evil, but at least at some point, that lesser evil might have a feeling that bends towards you and your family, that's looking at an amelioration process to make things a little better for you and your family, for you and your environment, for you and your community. right? What you have right now is the back breaking system of government that's in place. You got a social system that's very decayed, and somewhere along the way there needs to be a system that lifts some of that back breaking, that yoke carrying social injustice from the backs of Barbadians, and places it where it needs to be placed, at the foot of the doors, at the foot of the steps to Parliament, where the real criminals, where the real social marauders exist, in the House of Assembly. Those people in there that enter into that place, that legislate laws for Barbados, that are supposed to prosecute the truth, they do nothing at all relative to prosecution of the truth. They are people who operate with smoke and mirrors, no different than oil and snake salesmen of the American West. They are nothing. They operate only to tell lies. And as long as the Barbadian people do not believe in what's being spun, the political operatives spinning lies and telling them things that are totally untruthful, once they start to understand that and to bring that into their vision, they'll then be able to make the changes necessary for themselves and their families. You know, Barbadians, your communities are filled with people who are really ready to lead, ready to take charge of your communities and your government, and you're recycling nonsense peddlers, nonsense politicians, liars, and crooks. And at the end of the day, you need to get rid of them, replace them, get them out of mind, out of sight, and look for new blood. Get new blood that can come in and help you solve your problem, help you fix your household. I believe that there is hope. I believe in a place called hope. I do, from the bottom of my heart. And people may say that I'm nostalgic and I'm foolish or whatever, and I'll take that. I'll take that lump. I don't mind. I stand firm on my position that there is hope for you, Barbados. There's hope for you, Barbadians. But you must know yourselves. You must know your history. You must be able to speak to each other with some form of civility, and not act from a totality of insularity and polarization. You must get away from that in the 21st century. It is a paralysis, it is a paralyzing effect that plagues our people and subjugates us. We are subjugated by our own minds, not by anyone else. It is our minds that subjugate us. Because if we can see beyond our own indifferences, if we can come together and call each other together in a positive light, oh man, the changes that we can hand out to each other, that we can make for Barbados and for each other, will be massive. I believe that deeply inside my soul. So I am here to suffer with you because you are my people and I love you. I know no others but you. But I am hurt for you and for me. And I can only speak from my hurt, from my suffering, that you may be able to see it and that you may be able to help me lift myself up, pull myself up, and walk like the God that I am meant to be. And you are meant to be gods too, Barbadians. You are meant to be strong purveyors of truth and justice. It may seem remote at this stage of the game for a lot of people, but I don't believe that it is a remote thing. I'll hand back to you now, Sherry.
Okay, I want to thank you. We've been on almost an hour, and I think that's on the back end of it. We were live streaming on YouTube, and we have Ustream. So I invite people to go to nakeddeparture.com, and in the upper, I don't know if you're coming on by phone or if you are looking at the website by a computer, but you will see the prompts. You will see it's embedded. You can just push play and you can hear the live show or the recorded show. And I want to thank you. We'll be back on soon and we can talk more about what's happening in our island home, and we can talk about what's happening in the world, so we can do our different parallels and see where we can go with making recommendations. And I want to thank you, Victor. Thank you so very much for coming on with me.
Most welcome, Sherry.
Okay, bye bye.
And